Session 4. Knocking on the door. We are back again. We are back. Like a chiropractor, spinal cord specialist. We are back in effect. This might be the first time that you've come across the podcast Conversations with C&C. This is the space and place where the themes and topics of race, culture, and therapy are the fundamental pillars that the podcast is built on. And also the place where exploration, expertise, and experience align themselves. And a place where we just have authentic, real conversations from a professional and personal perspective. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm one of the hosts. My name is Claude. I'm an integrative therapist as well as a family therapist. And I'm just happy to be here alongside my guy, the main man. The general, the champion, the guy of guys, the go-to of go-tos, Mr. Miyagi. I'm just Daniel's son in the building. My brother, my dear brother, and good friend, Carl.
Oh, wow. What an introduction, man. I feel that. Yes, it's good to be here. It's good to be here. Have a lovely sister here. Dawn is here today with us. Lovely guest to chop it up. Yes, for our listeners, psychotherapist, that moniker there. Psychotherapist, but also a counselor. Something from, our previous session 3, that the way that you said precious. We can be so precious. And I know that, again, I come with levels. There's layers to what it is that we do. And so you need the psychotherapist.
Yes.
You need but I don't think of myself as that elitist psychotherapist.
Come on.
I'm still able to talk to anyone. And wherever you are, I want to be able to meet you where you are. With no airs and graces, and just being transparent. And what it is that you need to discuss.
Wherever you are, I want to be able to meet you.
Yes.
So we're not residing on the top floor.
No.
No. It's not the penthouse.
It's not elitist.
It's not elitist. Wherever you are. Great. Wow. So as you guys will know, we have a guest with us. Season 2, we told you that we had some treats, we had some surprises, and as Carla's said, we have Dawn with us, and really excited about what Dawn will share with us and her experiences and her insights and nuggets, and just life experiences that I'm sure we'll be able to connect with the wide range of people that listen. But before I introduce Dawn, we need to introduce her properly. A few people asked me about the T-shirt that I wore last week.
Okay.
It said black with the colours, the red, gold, and green. So just for the viewers who inquired and wanted to know where they could get it. So if you go to Products of Grace Official. So that's Products of Grace Official on Instagram. You'll be able to purchase your T-shirts, your polo T-shirts. So just head over to the gram and have a little look. And you'll see what they've got going on over there. Because there were a few people were inquiring. But yes. So who do we have here with us? We got, so just for the listeners' purposes, and I know this is a truncated, condensed version. I'm coming official with my papers. We do things properly around here. So Dawn is a HR specialist with employee relations, organizational change and management development experience. She has advised managers up to and including director level. So Dawn is talking to the big boys, the big individuals. Dawn develops pragmatic solutions for her clients' problems so that everyone can thrive in the workplace. For example, Dawn's Relationship Matters series, which addresses poor behaviors in the workplace, is on the learning curriculum of 4 organizations.
That's deep.
That's deep. That the work that has been done, the organization has taken it on board, and that this has to be a part of not just the curriculum, but the curriculum influences the culture and the ambience and the customs and the way of doing things. That if you don't know, get to know policy and process awareness workshops helps people understand how a lack of HR policy can be costly.
And I want to interject there because I was around when that was birthed.
Yeah.
If you don't know, you better get to know. You better ask somebody and ask Dawn.
Ask Dawn.
Yeah, I was around. I was around. It's powerful. If you don't know, get to know. Because that's why I feel, and that's why when we were discussing bringing guests on, and I wanted to bring you on because when you think about people and employment and jobs, and because a lot of it, we were talking earlier before, because we have our conversations before, attachment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's how you attach, because it's, you would have watched, for a lot of us, whoever looked after us, grandparents, mom, dad, brothers and sisters, some of us were dragged up by our siblings. You know what I mean? You would have watched them. You would have watched them and what they went through in relation to their jobs and getting jobs, holding jobs, not being able to hold jobs because of the relationships or the lack of relating to others in that work environment. And again, patterns replicating themselves, because hold on, is it always their fault that you not holding on to these jobs? What's going on there? Yeah. So I just wanted to jump in.
Change maker, climate changer is what comes to mind as I'm reading this.
Yeah.
And clients include Essex Partnership University Trust, the North Central London CCG, Oxlade's Foundation NHS Trust, and the Westway Trust. So some serious established organizations. So Dawn, we just want to say thank you first and foremost for taking time out of your schedule to connect with us and to sit with us and to be with us, and that we can just have an authentic being moment. Is what I'd like to phrase it as just a moment of being. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. You are welcome.
So we start off our show all the time with a temperature check. So a temperature check is just checking in where we are in the here and now. So maybe we could start with you, Dawn. Temperature check. How you feeling as we sit here?
I'm actually feeling good.
Yeah.
The thought that I had, even when you gave me those questions, I thought, I'm not going to overthink it. This is a conversation. And being able to get here on time, and I'm good. I am good.
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Doc?
I was just thinking. Okay, now I know we're having a guest. So that was on my mind. Like Dawn's coming. I haven't seen Dawn in a minute, but it was a looking forward to seeing you and what we're going to be discussing. So excited about what's ahead, because it's a meaningful discussion that needs to be had. It needs to be had. So joyous in regards to that. Joyous,
I'm feeling gassed, if I can use that as the term. I feel Claude feels gassed, as my young people say, like that I engage with. He and she was. I feel gassed in the moment, and I'm gassed and excited, because we don't just invite anyone to our house in everyday life outside of this, and we're not just going to invite anyone to sit on the green, pristine, clean couch. So I'm excited just to learn. I sit here as a student of life, and being willing to learn and being open to what Dawn has to bring. So I'm excited, and I'm gassed. I'm gassed. So that's where I'm at in the here and now.
We agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm sure Brother G agrees with that. He was gas.
Yeah. G's the man. You guys are not going to see him for now, but he's the guy.
Right.
He's the guy. He's the guy. He's the guy. He might even hit the green couch one day soon. Yeah, then you can see him. Top model. Yeah, my guy, man. Sharp. Gillette razor. But yeah, Dawn.
Yeah.
As I said, great to have you. So we ask all of our guests, this is our opening question that we ask everyone. If you was in therapy, if you had to see a therapist tomorrow, talking therapy, had to see a counsellor tomorrow, what would you talk about and what would you want to get out of that session?
What would I want to talk about? I thought about this and I'd probably go for a maintenance session. I remember, I've been to therapy and I've got loads out of therapy, and I've made a lot of progress, not just from a therapeutic perspective, but from a personal perspective as well. And it's almost like I heard the Lord saying a few months ago, whatever it took you to get you here, you've got to keep on doing it. So, I started thinking about maintenance sessions. So I would go for a maintenance session to make sure that those things that have been decluttered, that have been dealt with, things haven't creeped in. You can declutter a room.
That's true.
And certain things start creeping in or certain things start getting out of place. So it would be for a maintenance session to make sure that I have maintained my progress, maintained, sustained, and looking to go to the next level. In much the same way as if you put a car in.
Come on.
For a full service. You're putting the car in for a full service. And it's kind of like, my husband normally says to me, I've done this to the car, did you notice? And I'm like, I just get in there and drive. But when the car's had a full service, you can see a discernible difference. So I would say a maintenance session is kind of like akin to having a full service. You don't need to service your car every month, but every so often you have to either go in for a mini service or a full service, whatever it looks like for you.
For A or B. For A or B service.
Any other business?
No, they say a A, B. Is it an A service or is it a B service?
Okay, you need to explain that to me.
Yeah. So Michael would know. Shout out
Probably.
to Michael, yeah. Michael would know. Because that's what he said. When you get in the car, have you noticed the difference? Because I had this and this stuff. So it sounds like he would have probably had a service done.
Yeah.
Where it's the overall, they're looking at everything.
Yeah.
No stone unturned sort of thing. But your B service is okay. Change the oil. Look at the discs, the brakes, the filters and everything, spark plugs. Everything is A-okay in that regard. Yeah, but your A service.
It's the A service. I'll be going for the A service.
I like what you said, maintain and sustain and then the next level. So that trichotomy. Yeah.
I'm looking for optimal levels.
Go ahead.
Because why should we be
Optimal
I'm heading for optimal, whether it be optimal health.
Come on.
Why should we settle for mediocre? Why should we settle for average? Some of us are driving through life and we're driving through life, our tyres are going down, or we're driving through life without power steering. And when you're heading for an optimal level, because it's a journey, you're looking for power steering, aren't you?
Yeah.
Life's difficult. We need some power steering to get us through life. Yeah.
The metaphors, you're dropping these metaphors again.
Doc, I saw you digest that. Doc was like, I was just on the veranda there as you was talking. Just when you would hear like, the women in the family, the mums, the grandmas, the aunties, just sharing those nuggets, those little metaphors that you could take away and hold. So this is why we're gassed. This is why we're joyous, because this is going to be a blessed show. So Dawn, man, it'd be good to unpack a bit of your journey, because you used the term journey. And before you were, trailblazing and impacting lives, and changing, getting organizations to change their structure and their customs, you would have been a child.
Yeah.
So if you could share with us a song that represents your childhood. So a song that would kind of represent the time, the ambience, what was going on in the home for you. Like, a song that represents childhood.
I didn't really hear music in my grandparents' house. There was a lot of love, but not necessarily music that I kind of like, I don't know, resonated with me, stayed with me.
Yeah.
But I do remember going to school, and we had, when school had, assemblies, the old-fashioned assemblies. And I remember the song, when I read this, the questions, the first song that came to me, and I thought about it in the school context, was Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King of Kings. Now, at the time, I didn't realise what we were singing, but that was a song. Yeah. And the other song would have been Kumbaya. Yeah. So those are just kind of like, that was my first thought when I thought about that question. It would have been Hosanna.
And what memories of are connected to that time of school? And
school's just like this carefree.
Yeah.
You didn't have a problem. I even remember like the apparatus against the wall. The blue apparatus, and you had to sit on the floor unless you was a certain age, and you could sit on the bench. But but I remember that. Yeah, those are the two songs. Yeah,
Kumbaya.
Yeah,
and Hosanna.
Yeah, yeah. And I also remember even being older, as an older child, how those songs would provide comfort, but not knowing until you're older how comforting those songs were as well. Yeah.
So there was a back then there would have been a meaning, but the meaning was perhaps unspoken.
Yeah.
And now you're able to attach meaning to it now as an adult.
Yeah.
And what it meant.
Yeah.
And then I'm also hearing that it was comforting.
Yes.
To you even then.
Yeah.
And not knowing that, of that, not knowing that meaning, Hosanna.
Yeah.
Oh, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Shows you the power of music and words and the spirit that things can be written in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Over the ages, if songs don't lose, certain songs don't lose the essence and the power, and maintain throughout the ages the message. So Dawn, I'm just thinking, where did you grow up? What's like, background, nationality? Yeah.
So my grandparents and my parents are from Jamaica. So I grew up with my grandparents for the first 5 years.
In Jamaica or in England?
London? Sorry,
in England.
In London. Just idyllic. First 5 years, absolutely idyllic, and probably a little bit beyond there as well.
Yeah.
So my grandparents, like a lot of people that came over in the Windrush era, hardworking, probably went before their time because of the hard work that doing the 3 and the 4 jobs and trying to not look after their kids, but us as grandkids as well. So me and my brother lived with my grandparents. Yeah. But I remember that, and I remember their work ethic, and I remember no matter what, I didn't even realise how hard they had it until I actually grew up, because they never let us know it. It was kind of like, we were kind of like insulated from that. So it's not until I grew up that I realised actually they were doing 3, 4 jobs and kind of like playing tag. So my grandmother would be there, then she would go off to work, then my granddad would come in, and it was literally playing tag. And in those days, so people would come over, they'd rent a room. So my grandparents rented rooms to people that would come over from Jamaica. They would save their deposit and they would move out. And so then you had this community around you that would spring up. And I remember going and delivering partner.
Yes.
That long, hot walks.
For people who don't know what partner is, could you
partner, I suppose, is like a community savings, isn't it?
Yes.
So members of the community come together and they agree to put in a certain amount for a certain period of time, and then someone withdraws a hand and it just keeps on going. So it was almost like a community credit union, I suppose.
Yeah.
Game changer
Yeah.
for community. I remember the first partner withdrawal that my mum got as a kid. It must have been about £2,000. That was the most money I had ever seen. And that, I thought we were rich, you know, like, partners blessed us so many communities and families and
and not realising until we grew up that partner is partner. Gotta love our Jamaica.
Come on.
Gotta love our Jamaica.
Only us, right? Partner.
So it's not until I grew up that I thought, oh, that's what it actually is.
Yeah.
And it's still going now.
Still going now.
You know, my youngest sister is in her 30s. You know, Keisha's in a partner.
Okay.
Hard. You know,
So you're this little young girl, you know, grandparents are doing it, you know, working hard, they're tagging, they're protecting you from, and our Windrush people, you know, our families, they did that. They protected us from the graft and the grind that that they were enduring. So tell us a little bit more, you know, moving forward, like, you know, childhood as you kind of getting older. What was like school like for you? And
I think just going back a little bit, one of the things about my grandmother was that she never underestimated my ability. You know, I remember when they came over, she'd always say, Dawn, I've got this form to fill out. And I used to feel, oh Lord, here we go again. Because back then, government forms were like mini booklets. So you got this child, I don't think I was even 8, and I was completing forms for my grandmother. Little did I know that these forms were to do with citizenship. And then every now and again, I'd hear her saying, I need to go to Somerset House. Not knowing until years later that Somerset House is where they filed all of the government documents, you know. And so my grandmother was always one to get me to fill out forms from quite an early age, and into my teens I was doing it. But it's not until years later I realised the relevance of that. And the relevance was because my grandmother had filled out the forms, got me to fill out the forms. Because sometimes I'd say, you know, Mummy, I don't even know what this says. I don't even know what this means, because I was only a young child. She said, well, just put what you think. So I was literally putting what I thought it was. And it wasn't until years later I realised that as a result of my grandmother filing her forms on time, making sure that actually our family was spared the Windrush scandal.
wow.
And this was a woman that was always on her paperwork, making sure that she filed on time, making sure that she didn't take it for granted that just because she was a citizen here, that everything had to be in order for her. So it was until years later that I thought, wow, we were saved the Windrush scandal because of this woman.
Wow.
And a faith in a child that was less than 10 years old.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. Something that I said earlier, different, I think, session 3, that this idea of intentional diligence.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, having worked within the DOJ, the Department of Justice, knowing that, and also my wife, knowing that, you know, this is what she does in her day-to-day job, that, you know, how many people, you know, thousands upon thousands of people have been caught up in this because of that lack of diligence.
Yeah.
Because the material was available. It was available, maybe hidden, but you had access.
Yeah.
You had access, but thinking that, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it. And it never coming.
Yeah.
And then as a result of that, so that is, Dawn, that's powerful what you just shared there.
Yeah.
And it makes me think that Dawn was doing early HR events.
Yeah.
Come on, she was.
That, you know,
She was setting the scene.
the synchronicity, like you know, the paperwork that you were dealing with and what you was completing, how that connects to So today, in a sense. So your early years. Unpack that a little bit with us. Just your your teen years, schooling.
Yeah. So I think with my grandparents, I had a more carefree life. When I went to live with my mum, let's just say it wasn't just as carefree. And so maybe not maybe, but definitely those gifts, they were still there and they were still operating, because when people came with a problem, I'd be able to say, well, why don't you just do this, this and this? Or why don't you make this phone call? Or why don't you make that phone call? So I was always someone, there's a problem. We know what the problem is. What is the solution? So that's what's the consistent theme.
And you're how old at this time?
Oh gosh, so I think this ran all the way through.
Wow.
You know, much like a child will have a singing ability,
Yeah.
or some kind of scientific ability, that was the consistent theme. You know, people would come and say, I've got this problem, or don't do this and don't do that, and have the confidence that it would be done. But I didn't recognise that until I was in my 40s.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't really step back. Actually, I might have been a little bit older. I was writing, a health organisation asked me to do a masterclass for, I can't think was it maybe their Black History Month, and I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do for them? And I think the first topic I did was the gift in you. So it was on my journey of writing that workshop, the gift in you, that I began to self-reflect and actually think, wow, I've been doing this. You know, Steve Harvey said, well, what's your gift? What does he say? I'm going to try and paraphrase. It's a thing that you do with the least amount of effort. And that is the most simplest, most profound definition. And problem solving is getting ideas. It doesn't come hard to me. It flows.
Innate.
As long as I'm rested, as long as I'm looking after my mental health and well-being, it flows.
It's innate. It just wow.
Okay. And just thinking, you know, we like to oscillate, because where my mind goes to is, what's the opposite of that? When someone doesn't have that. And how because you get a mental representation of that when someone doesn't have that, you know, because I feel that I have that ability to want to solve issues, or have a solution, not get bogged down in what I can't do, or what's not feasible, or you know, all of those different, you know, things that come to someone else. Well, like, you know, I have you know, people in my family, relationships, friends. It can't be done. It can't be done. You know, and then wallow in that. You know, so you know, we call what we would call a pity party in relation to, well, it can't be done, so we might as well just rest on our laurels here, because you can't do it.
The truth is, when we live like that, and I've had moments. More than moments, actually. I've had seasons when I've lived like that. It's the equivalent to me of someone putting literally a black hood over my head, because I see no vision, I see no way out, I see no hope, I see the bad stress just starts mounting. But if I can see a solution, okay, we're not out of the woods yet, but I can see a pathway out. I can see that light at the end of the tunnel. But living the other way is just, it's out of the question for me.
As you were speaking, someone came to mind who recently passed, was Kevin Samuel. Yeah, I know you're familiar with him. He's this relationship guru and very pristine. You know, the way he put himself together, he was, you know, the brother was on it, but it's just come to light what he died of. He died of hypertension. You know, high blood pressure. And I liken that to, you know, as we're describing this, you know, being solution focused, if you will, having that ability to look beyond the problem. That's a gift. Being able to look beyond the problem, and because it's not necessarily the problem itself.
No.
It's not. It's how you. You know, we've talked about this, I believe, in our perhaps many years ago Bible study.
Yeah.
When you talk about, your internal response, your internal response to that problem and where it comes from.
Traumas and triggers.
Yes. Traumas and triggers. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, that's deep.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Dawn, I'm intrigued. Curiosity, because you mentioned about, what you're doing now. Like, I don't know if it was a realization at 40, but I'm just intrigued by what you was doing before, like some of your earlier jobs.
So I had a lot of admin jobs mainly, and just this almost being sold on the dream that if you could get into an admin job in the NHS or local government, you had it made. But kind of like putting a square peg into a round hole. So I did those admin jobs, whether it be temping or permanent roles, mainly admin jobs for a lot of years, until I came across, I was doing a temping role and I was temping for a director of HR. And he specialised in employee relations, which is like, sickness, disciplinary grievance, but also, having meetings with unions, negotiating with unions. And I kind of like, I had a front row seat to that and how he would deal with trade unions and stuff like that. And yeah, that's what sparked my interest in HR, I suppose.
So you've got the front row, movie seat, popcorn, observing what's happening.
Yeah.
What did that do for you when you saw that?
It was the way he was always cool, calm and collected.
Yeah.
And he always, when tensions would get high, he would always laugh. So I watched this guy, because we used to sit side by side. And I watched this guy, and that's what sparked my interest.
And I think this is really important for the listeners.
Yeah.
So we can get inspired, grab interest.
Yeah.
You're getting this first-hand insight to how he's responding and what he's doing.
Yeah.
But some people stay there. This is an interest. Oh wow, this is quite insightful. I'm quite inspired. Like, it doesn't sound like from the bio and just what we know. You didn't stay at those 3 stages. So what did you do next after being inspired?
I found Croydon College. I found that they were doing an open day. I turned up with every single piece of paperwork because they weren't going to tell me no. I was signing up there and then.
For a HR course?
Yeah, for a HR course there and then.
Came ready.
And it was always this, I always had this thing like, not just getting myself to the next level, but getting my other people to the next level. And I remember that at that time, seeing a job for one of my brothers. And I said, he can do that.
Yeah.
Helping him do the form. And then he went on to work there at this government agency for a long time. So yeah, it was kind of like it's not just about looking out for yourself, but looking out for opportunities for other people. So yeah, I went and applied for a HR course at Croydon College. It wasn't a HR advisor role, it was a HR administrator role. Saw that advertised, went for the role, and then just worked my way up.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old was you at the time?
Oh gosh, so we're talking around 1999, 2000. I was just before 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then
that reawakening, that instead of being diverted into things that wasn't for me really, but you're doing it because of different expectations. You're doing it, you're throwing myself off course because of, you mentioned about upbringing and stuff like that, throwing myself off course, not being stable. But there was just something anchoring, and I think there's something anchoring that we can go through difficult times, but if we can go back to a time when we were stable, more often than not, that we will find that all is not lost. So you might have things that happen in between them, but I had this yearning for stability, this yearning that I knew that I could do better. So why wasn't I doing better? And that pressing forth. But what did that look like? That was going to take action. So as I said, picking up every single piece of paper I needed, so they couldn't tell me know when I went to the open day at Croydon College. And just going there and signing up, you know, then finding that HR administrator role, which is the entry role. Yeah. And just going on a journey with some outstanding HR practitioners. Yeah.
Wow.
I love how you spoke about teleporting back to a place where things were stable, which I would call like a lived experience that you could look back on, or some people would say the receipts.
Yeah.
You know, the people in court would say evidence, like that you were able to look back and say, okay, no, I remember this. This is where I was thriving.
Yeah.
You know, I have this lived experience and memories and this moment, and then being able to draw strength, energy, petrol, to commute to where you are now. And I'm just, you know, what is it, just for our listeners, like what is it that you do? Like, if you could kind of break it down, what is it that you do? What does Dawn do?
I love advocating. You know, I remember like when I had a family member and he was going through the mental health system and, you know, rocking up and, you know, speaking for him at tribunals. And I remember at one time, I think the judge, because you've got a judge on the tribunal, saying, you know, are you a social worker? No, just here for him. You know, that problem solving, that, you know, what does he need? He needs someone to turn up. What can you do? You can go and speak, you know? So, you know, back to my grandmother and the confidence that she had in me that I could help her to do those forms. I could help my brother as well. And that kind of like pulling the threads through to becoming a HR specialist. Yeah.
So you manage your own, you're director of your own organisation.
Yeah.
For the listeners, what is it called?
Okay. We could just go back a bit.
Yeah.
So going through, you know, being the HR administrator, seeing the foundation of what a HR department looks like, what it does, at its most basic foundational level. Because if you can understand what a HR department, and you are taught well, you can go anywhere. And that's true for the same professions. So even going in at an entry level, don't despise, you know, the beginnings of small things. You know, Carl said. And I was able to cut my teeth there. And I was able to cut my teeth in a safe place and a safe space, because then I saw other senior members of staff who were willing to teach, open doors and all the rest of it. And then I started working my way up to HR advisor, then senior HR advisor, then HR consultant. So I spent about 15 years in the NHS.
Wow.
Yeah. And, you know, learning some really good tidbits, you know, managing sicknesses, disciplinaries, grievances, organisational change, and seeing what good management looks like, seeing what bad management looks like. And I never forget that I remember my first tribunal case, I was asked to just look after this case. And I remember speaking to the lawyer and I remember thinking, oh, isn't he so calm? Isn't he so helpful? Not realising that they were actually charging by the hour. So you have time to you have time to be all of that.
Billable hours. Billable hours.
Stretch it out. Okay, cool.
But I think when I think about some of the powerful lessons I learned during that period, where I worked under a HR manager we worked together for a good 10 years. Yes. It's around 10 years. But we didn't always agree. Yeah. I mean, we had our disagreements. But there's one thing that you couldn't say. She was highly skilled in her craft. And she demanded high standards. So I remember if you was doing an outcome letter, it had to be on point. Because if you handed it into her, she was only going to scroll up the sides, you know, and that helped to teach our craft. You know, when you're writing a letter, what does it look like? Are you hitting the right points? So I worked under some really good HR managers. I remember there was a HR manager one of our head of HR, and I used to walk in and, say, this is the issue. And she would say, well, what's your solution? And I always used to think, before I actually got it, it was like, I've come to you with a problem. In my head, I'm like, you tell me. But actually, she was actually teaching me a lesson. There's a problem, but what solution you're coming in? It may not be the right solution, but you're coming with a solution. So learning from those people that were at the top of their game, but also we had this thing that we had access to employment lawyers. But if we had to speak to an employment lawyer, we had to go in and make the case for it. Yeah? And as long as we could make the case to our HR manager or head of HR, we could get access to the employment lawyers. But what did that teach us? That taught us to stand on our own 2 feet, but also know the boundaries of our knowledge. So it's about getting a good grounding of where you are, because whether you're a nurse, doctor, physio, counsellor, if you can get that good grounding, you'll fly wherever you go. And staying humble. Humble and teachable. Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is none of that experience was ever in vain. It was building and building, for where you are now.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, like on a day-to-day, so you manage you have your own organisation.
Yeah.
Like, what is it that you do with the organisation? What does day-to-day look like for Dawn?
So I've taken most of summer off. So day-to-day looks pretty relaxed and just doing the absolute minimum because I'm recovering from an injury.
Yeah.
But what does it look like? I have moved more into dealing with root causes of problems. So what are the root causes of disciplinaries? What are the root causes of grievances? What are the root causes of sickness absence? Because somewhere along the line, they're all connected. And, looking at the behaviours that give rise to the toxicity in our organisations, like microaggressions, collusion, and gaslighting, and being very clear, well, why is it that Black and ethnic and minority ethnic staff are more likely to enter the formal disciplinary proceedings compared to their white counterparts? Why is it that Black and ethnic minority ethnic professionals are more likely to be referred to their professional bodies? Why is it? Because right now, it's almost become, we've almost normalised those stats, right? We've normalised those stats. But behind those stats are mums, dads, aunties, uncles, brothers. I've seen it up and close, personal, with my family members. And one thing that has occurred to me is when people are going through those situations, it's actually trauma. And you can see that trauma on their faces, on their bodies, literally as almost as though they've been punched. It's no different. Someone could have walked and given them a physical slap or punch. You literally see the injury that's upon them. And not only are they dealing with that injury, they're having to navigate this process. So compounded, yes. And then they've got their own traumas and triggers if they've gone through stuff in other workplaces or in life in general. So as well as advising people on, like, I would call it the sharp end, the acute end. This is an acute problem where you need to, like, walk you back from the cliff edge and help you manage this case. I got a bit tired of that because it's like, why are we even here? We need to go and look at the root causes. So now I develop solutions that attack and address those problems that are causing, the stats that we see year on. They're not new. So why are we accommodating it? Why are we normalising it? And in my Twitter feed, you often, if there's a latest race report comes out, or, if there's some kind of racial discrimination, you hear this outrage on Twitter. And I think it's fine to be outraged, but what are you doing with that outrage? Because if you're just having outrage for outrage's sake, that means that's called emotional tax. Who wants to pay more tax than they need to? Right?
Tell me about it.
Who?
Tell me about it.
So therefore, if we are having these situations, half the time I've learned to kind of like put a buffer. and see it for what it is. But like, I haven't got time crying over it. I need to understand what is the solution. Because if I can get to the solution, I can reach somebody. That person, it might mean the difference between that person sleeping or not sleeping at night. It may make the difference between that person paying their mortgage or rent. Or it may be the difference between that person being able to just do the functional aspects of life, full stop. Some people aren't functioning right now because they've got a disciplinary hanging over their head.
That's right.
Or they're having some form of, can we call it low level? Low level mistreatment in the workplace that they can't put their finger on. But come Monday morning or their next shift or whatever their working pattern is, they just can't face going into work. So what is all about? What is going on in the organisation? So I get to go into the organisations and, you know, in the workshops, we create safe spaces where people speak about their experiences. I remember, I think it was a microaggressions workshop, and generally we do about 2 to 3 case studies so we can see how it manifests in the workplace. And I think we done one, and that sparked up a whole discussion about people's experiences, and people were able to say, I understand how it manifests. This happened to me. I can now make sense of what happened to me and then deal with it in a healthy way. Yeah.
It's so many different nuggets in there. It's kind of challenging to synthesize with everything that you just shared there. But I think what comes out for me is I think you asked it earlier, Hope Place.
Yeah.
Hope Place. Yeah. So if you give us the strap line of what Hope Place does, and if people, you know, our listeners, our viewers, if they needed to reach you, and they're going through what you just described, because I would say a number of people who are listening would be going through something similar to what you just described there. How could they reach out to you?
So hopeplace.co.uk. The strapline to Hope Place is helping you to be HR wise and thrive. Helping you to be HR wise and thrive. It's not just about getting through a process. If that's where you're at, it's about getting through the process and thriving as well. Yeah. And then Hope Place HR on YouTube.
Because I haven't been there myself, and I think that's that resonance and why I wanted you to come on.
Yeah.
Because I always talk about it was an early message, and I think it was something that I heard from my parents, people in their jobs. That's what, as an 8-year-old, I'm just always remember that people and their jobs. And there's so many different connotations to that, whether, getting up every day at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. to go to that job that perhaps you don't really like very much. But you have that responsibility, as you say, your grandparents, 3 and 4 jobs, and tag teaming, and then not knowing, because back then everything was a bit secretive, wasn't it? You don't really get the kids involved in all the challenges and, and that you're going through. So people in their jobs, and it resonates with me that thing of being in isolation. Yeah, and not, who do I turn to? The next thing is, if you're in an organization, your other strapline about if you don't know,
get to know. Okay, so the if you don't know, get to know. Actually, back in 2017, it's about 6 or 7 people in my personal network, like literally month after month, coming up with these HR issues in their organisation. And I remember coming back home from the latest one and thinking, Lord, what is going on here? So I most of those situations we were able to help with. And then I was saying to my sister, we've got to do something about this. My sister also works with me. And I said, I want to do some blogging about this so people aren't ignorant. And I said, what can we call this? How can, the blog was about raising awareness of policies and processes, being aware of it. The idea is prevention is better than cure. If you're aware of the policies, you can work in line with the policies and help to avert problems. So I said to my sister, what should we call this? And she said, my sister's really pragmatic, really down to earth. She said, well, if you don't know, get to know, you know? And so if you don't know, get to know became a blog, a written blog. And then it has now evolved into a workshop. So Mental Health Trust asked me to deliver it to one of their forums. And I remember saying, like, haven't you got a HR department? Am I going to step on any toes? And she said, look, I am tired of people beating a path to my door that they're in a formal process and they haven't read the policy.
Yes.
I need this done.
Yes.
So we went in there, and it was specifically focused on their policy. So you've got some principles around reading policies and processes, but I literally went into their specific policy. And there were things, you know, delivered. I think it was sickness, absence, and disciplinary. And as I'm delivering what they should know, the high points, because it's only high points, I say, well, I'm giving you a guide. You still have to read the policy for yourself. You know, they were saying, I didn't even know this was here. I didn't even know that was there.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I'm sitting here, I'm listening, I'm gleaning, taking in, I'm digesting, and reflecting as you're speaking. And within what you're talking about, there is so much that you are doing. So you are at times given a voice to the voiceless within the organisation. There are times you are taking the masking tape off that person's mouth or those individuals through your training and allowing them to say, this is what's going on for us.
Yes.
So you said that, I think there might have been 3 models or 3 sessions you were meant to, 3 case studies. And you did the 1 case study and everyone started pouring out. So you're making people feel safe, seen and heard. And that's about value, right? And then you're educating the individuals about the policies and the procedures and processes within the organisation. You know, and if you don't know, you need to get to know this. Here's the additional stuff that you actually need to get to know. So you're changing the culture and climate within these organisations. And no employees want to feel devalued, unvalued. So you're getting organisations to do self-audits and getting them to look on their self and their processes. And within that, lives are being impacted. And I'm sure there'll be lives that you impact that you don't even know. That you won't see them because maybe of the people that you're working with, you know, they might be the directors or, you know, the managers, and what you're teaching them then goes on to impact, has that ripple effect on the staff within the organisation. So there's a lot that you're doing. And I just wanted that to breathe for a minute. That could easily go over people's heads. So when you're not in that space, you know, when you're not in that space of being a climate changer, I'm being very specific with that word because there are cultures and climates within organisations. When you're not doing that, what is Dawn doing?
What, not doing Hope Place?
When you're not doing Hope Place, tell us a little bit. I know that there's a podcast, but tell us a bit about life outside of, you know, HR.
I've been working on myself, doing a lot of work, and I'm working on my weaknesses. Taking the time to work on my weaknesses and being intentional about making sure that I connect with my social networks, teas, coffees with people. I love reading. I love reading. Anything that you're reading at the moment? I just finished Know Yourself, Know Your Money by Rachel Cruz. I'm just about to start another one. Yeah. But, you know, it's about focus on finance, but it really causes you to think more holistically about life. So there've been a few times I've been waking up and I was like thinking, she talks about classrooms. What classroom did you grow up in as it relates to finance? You know, was it the anxious classroom? Was it the secure classroom? Was it the unaware? And I remember waking up thinking, oh my goodness. You know, it's resonating that actually it's not just to do with finance, but it goes right the way across. So it's really just, especially taking this time off in the summer to really use this time to think, reflect, and intentionally grow. Slow down. So if you're asking what Dawn's really doing is, in essence, not just growing, but learning patience.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, because I was forced to slow down. And every time I start trying to rush, my injury reminds me, you need to sit down one place or you need to just like take a beat. That's it. Learning to take a beat as well.
Take a beat.
Take a beat. You know, I'm learning to be intentional. I can tell you what I'm doing in this season.
That's great.
Learning to be patient, learning to be intentional, learning to improve and intentionally connecting. That's what Dawn's doing.
And your podcast.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your pod.
So it was really like, I started off with, how did it start? Yeah, I wanted to offer people help 24 hours a day. I remember getting this first lockdown. I opened up my emails, finishing off an investigation for an organisation, and I just opened up my email. And I saw an email timed at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was a family member asking for help for someone emailed me about a family member who was in a potentially life-changing scenario at work. He could have lost his whole career. And it was the time of the email that struck me. It was 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I thought, whoa, someone could not sleep. So was able to go on and help that person, and he eventually kept his career. If he had lost, he would have lost his career. He would have lost his standing in the community. It was really high stakes. And so I determined that we was going to do handouts, started doing handouts where people can download. And I remember my sister then saying to me, you know, do a YouTube channel. You know, you can monetize that. I didn't hear the monetize bit. I heard was, are you telling me to put myself out there? And I gave her a stink side eye. You know? And, you know, as practical level, she just shook it off.
Yeah.
So I started Hope Place HR, and I thought, if we could get 1 view, you know, 5 views, that'd be good. But I think the highest number of views we've got going into several thousand. And that's 10 things to do if you're invited to a disciplinary hearing.
Come on.
And then every now and again, you'll get emails coming through or people ringing up and saying, you know, I've watched your video, it helped me. Or I watched your video, can you help me? And the idea around that really is that it shouldn't be that you're waiting for somebody. You know, don't wait on me because I might have decided to take the week off. Yeah. I may not be in a space where I really want to talk HR, but if the videos are there, if the tools are there, you can access them in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And people who are going through problems tend not to sleep.
That's right.
Yeah?
That's right.
They tend not to sleep. Another thing is they tend not to eat. You can literally see the issues eating away at them. But if they can get some kind of like tangible help in a bite-sized way that can help them. Because the one thing is when people are traumatized, and they are traumatized, I'm not a therapist, but I can see that they're going through a level of trauma, you've got to give them information in bite-sized pieces.
Yes.
Giving them information that's long and in-depth is going to put them underwater. You're trying to like lift them out of the water or walk them back from the cliff edge. So they're able to watch the videos, which are less than 10 minutes typically, and then say, I can do this or I need help.
That's right. Because as you mentioned that, what comes to mind is, you imagine, you know, how many of us have gone into organizations and we've got the job and we're elated that we got the job. And then they send the contract. Then you have your onboarding process. And how many of us, or not many of us, read those policies and procedures and everything like that and just put them to the side and sign your John Hancock that you have read them. But you haven't read them.
You haven't read them.
You know, but the thing is, and then and then thinking about not sleeping as a result of going through this whole process, and it's so daunting and it's so big, and the threat, the fear that I'm going to lose my career, my job. What do I do? Hope Place is there, and then because I'm thinking that having Hope Place and those things that are there for people to have access to, they can perhaps draw some type of understanding from that process to what the policies say. and they then able to make sense of it in bite size.
Yeah. What I find is really helpful is when I talk to people, they're often at 100, and it's bad stress. And if I can get them down to 30, that means that they can hear and that they can go and read. Oftentimes I say to people, they're not in that space where they're having problems, but, read policies and procedures. I haven't got the time. They're boring. Yeah. I agree they're boring. Okay. But they're necessary, but I haven't got the time. Do you know, I've spoken to many people in dire situations. They've got a letter saying, you come into a disciplinary hearing, the outcome might be action up to and including dismissal. I've never heard any of those people in any of those dire situations saying, I haven't got the time to read it. They are on it. Yeah. So I think that if we can begin to change the culture in the workplace, that we read policies, even if it's once a year. And the thing that I've learned is our brains are so powerful that we may not understand what we're reading, right? But as long as we read it, our brains are taking it in. That's the first thing. If we don't understand something, we can go and ask somebody, right? But you just need to know enough to that's not quite right. I remember reading it in this policy. Let me go back and check it, or, even asking, when you have staff meetings, asking if you can put policies and processes as a standing item on staff meetings. So by the time, this meeting comes along, everyone would have read the sickness absence policy, right? But at the same time, you invite your HR advisor to that meeting. And so everyone's got this background knowledge. The HR advisor can then do, a 15, 20-minute overview, which is another layer. So you're layering your knowledge, and then you can do a question and answer. And that's one policy done. And if you do that throughout the year, then your teams are going to be in a better place. But it's so quick and easy.
I'm loving that. The word IAG comes up. Your information, advice, and guidance. Like, that is priceless. Because as you said, no one wants to not be eating, not be sleeping, losing their job, livelihoods affected. So I love the way that you explain and describe how important it is to become acquainted, become friends, to build a relationship with the policy and the procedure of the company that you're at, whoever that individual is. So as we're kind of coming to the latter end, question that we ask everyone. When you go to a funeral or you go to a graveyard, you see a number of tombstones. And normally you'd have the date of birth, the date of death, then the person's name, and there may be like a quote or, something that references this person, something maybe connected to their character or a religious passage. And I think those things are fundamental. They're important to know. But the main thing, the most important thing on that tombstone is the little line. The little line between date of birth and date of death. And that little line represents our lives while we are alive. Some are allocated a few years on earth. Some are allocated 80, 10 or even more. So with just that concept in mind, living in a dash, so that little dash in the middle, when it's all said and done, not from a morbid perspective, but from a reflective, purposeful perspective, when it's all said and done, what does Dawn want that little line to represent? That line being your life. What do you want your life to have stood for?
Legacy. And I see legacy almost as a old-fashioned treasure chest, a legacy of transformation, a legacy of doing everything she was supposed to do down to the last jot. Yeah. So whether it's coming across and speaking to you and transforming your life, dropping a wise nugget, legacy. What is that I want? What I have done, not to be meaningful meaningful legacy that continues on after I've left. So how have I transformed life within my giftings, within the field that I work with? Yeah. How have I deposited wisdom? How have I helped people to walk back from that cliff edge, and also potentially transform their family lineage because they didn't go under? And how did she, that legacy also included eliminating abortive measures, helping people to avoid aborting their destiny. So that legacy is that wrapper, if you like, of all of those things.
That abortive process there that you just mentioned, what stays with me, and in relation to our relationship, is the sacrifice. The willingness, as you talk about legacy, and I'm a firm believer in legacy, and what I hope to leave behind as well, and that sacrifice that I've witnessed, that you've done, especially just thinking of, because what it reminded me of was Troy, and quitting the job, so that you could help him avoid the traps that were set, that were being set for him. And then, reading policies, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
And
the policy knowledge helped that.
in order for you to be able to homeschool him. Yeah. And because when you think about legacy and what you just described there, but I also hear in that sacrifice. In order to be able to, because that sacrifice now, I think you're seeing in fruition.
What could have been.
Yes. Just a tidbit of that.
Yes.
Could you give us something?
So Hope Place really was born out of the fact that it was when I was homeschooling my then teenage son, because he'd been permanently excluded from school. And I remember being in my bedroom one day, and I looked at him, and if I could see light in his eyes, hope was present. But if that darkness was coming, hope was fading. And so then I remember being exactly where I was in my bedroom, and I thought, Hope Place, but there are people that are going through situations like I'm going through, and they don't have the resources that we had to make a change. And initially Hope Place was really about, how do we help the marginalised or the socially excluded? Which is people suffering from mental health, for example, people who have been excluded from work, or, anybody that was socially excluded. It wasn't supposed to be a HR consultancy. Initially, it was about reaching out to the socially excluded, whatever that looked like, and using the training skills that I would train managers to help the community. And, as part of the policy knowledge, so this is how policy knowledge, if you know how to read a policy, is transferable. So then, trying to get him back into school, and the system saying, no, we're not having it. And then ringing someone in, I think it was the local council, and they told me what document I needed to go to, and then going through to this document, this DFES, Department for Education and Skills document, and saying what the local authorities can and cannot do. Well, you give me a policy document, I'm good to go. You told me we couldn't do this, but, we are good to go with that. And so from it looking like a hopeless situation to using policy knowledge to kind of like transfer. I don't know much about education, but I know how to read a policy. And from them being able to read the policy and being very clear what that policy said about exclusion, not just what the policy said from an educational perspective, but from a legal perspective, then I was able to go and advocate. And even when a particular school said, we're not having him, like, bang, slapping the door, saying what that policy said and reiterating that policy back to them. And the doors opening because,
you have to adhere to your policy.
And let's have a meeting to discuss him coming to the school.
Come on.
And then,
Powerful, man.
then I remember being in the reception, and they had an advert out for parent governor, and I heard the Lord clearly saying, go and be a parent governor. No. But actually, going back to the entry point when I went to meet him at the school, going to the school, I deliberately dressed down in jeans. Yeah. And, they kind of like grilled us a bit, but, you had to go in. But, applied for to be a governor. Everything within me didn't want to do this governorship. But I remember, and he wasn't no angel, so I'll emphasize that.
Yeah.
My friends saying, they will treat him differently now you're a parent governor. So instead of having this bombardment of this latest negative conversation, teachers would come up to me and say, I had a word with him. Could you please have a word? So it changed the dynamic completely. Yeah. But I will go on to say, if I got time, can I tell you this little story? There was, as part of being a governor, you sit on exclusion panels. So we saw what exclusion does to families. And I will say, when he was excluded, we appealed, and I won the appeal.
Come on.
God help us to win the appeal.
Yeah.
But I decided to keep him home because I knew as a parent that there was things that we needed to do before we put him back into school. So he could have gone back. But he's back in school. I'm sitting on the governing body and, hearing an exclusion. And there was a child that had been excluded, faced adverse situation. And I remember thinking to myself, did anyone, because exclusion can be supportive or it can be punitive.
Yes, that's correct.
Did anyone, and I'm looking at this child's life, hearing some of this stuff, like stuff that you wouldn't even think that a child should go through. And the question I had was, before this child was excluded, did anyone ask the question, is this a child in need? So the child was being excluded, in my view, or had been excluded, in my view, based on the actions of the adults in that child's life.
Yes. Yeah.
So that child was bearing the responsibility of adults. So, that's what policy knowledge will do. It will transfer to other areas for the benefit of yourself, but for the benefit of others. If you can read a policy, you can apply it right across life.
And also, I think within what you're saying as well is like, so you're coming from a place of lived experience. So you had to roll up your sleeves and get in the trenches and fight for your son. And I know the education system pretty well, and there are parents and guardians that have been unable to do that because they've, for whatever reason, they don't have the information, they don't have the advocacy, they don't know where to go for someone to advocate on their behalf. And these school exclusions take place, like social cleansing, if I could use that as a term, which we know the school exclusion to prison pipeline. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
So to hear that you rolled up your sleeves, got stuck in, and you fought for your son, and then chose, I'm going to homeschool him. So, we're making this decision. I think that's really powerful. And then sitting on governor boards, and I'm a strong advocate. I've got like many friends who, black brothers and sisters that are sitting on those governing boards and are changing, the climate of that educational system in that school. So last two questions as we wrapping up. You use the term nugget. Is there one nugget that you could leave with the listeners?
Just a couple, really. Sorry for you. Protect your health and well-being at all costs.
Yes.
Prioritize it.
At all costs.
Make it be, you might be going through a difficult circumstance, whatever that difficult circumstance is. If you can prioritize your health and well-being, make that be your priority and then deal with the issues, then you will navigate it much more quicker. Much more easily. You'll come out there with less damage, I suppose is a better way of doing it. The other thing that I just wanted to add in is that I know when we appealed for the exclusion, I read something about there was a guy called Brendan. He was the chief inspector of prison, and he talked about the pipeline. And what stood out for me was he said, we have to start doing things so much more different. This guy was literally screaming. I could hear his passion come through in the document. And I think at the time it was 1% around there of parents appeal exclusions.
Yeah.
But if you, whether it's a school exclusion or whether it's a dismissal from employment, even if you're not sure about whether or not you're going to appeal, submit your intention to appeal, because once that window is closed, it is closed. So even if you're saying something like, we confirm we will be appealing, further and better details to follow, do that, but do not miss your window to appeal. Yeah, you may think all is lost, but it's about exercising what's available to you. If your appeal goes, that's it.
Powerful. And then the last question for us all: what are we taking away from today's experience? Because for me, it was an experience.
Yeah. Likewise, I think it's the education of self.
Yeah.
The education of self, and not being we talk about that drama triangle of the persecutor, the victim, and the rescuer, and not being on the periphery. Just allowing things to happen to you.
Yeah.
You have to get involved. You have to educate yourself. You can't sit idly by. Read your policies. Read up on the things that perhaps you think are boring.
Yeah.
It's like the person or the client that I talked to who says, I really don't want to make it. I was thinking about counseling the session. When you're thinking of counseling the session, that's when you need to be in the session. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what I'm taking away is, it was right to bring you on.
Thank you.
Was right to have this discussion because I know that the people who are listening would have heard this podcast however many months down the line.
Or years.
Yeah, or years. It will definitely resonate with them and perhaps encourage them to take action.
Yes. Yeah.
To take action. So powerful.
What are you taking away, Dawn?
My mind goes back to when I was listening to you guys take this, your podcast before this one, and that, just how easy these conversations can be, and how they are needed and how they are relevant. And the fact that listening to you two, my thought was, especially going towards the male's perspective, guys need to hear a couple of males just chilled and having a conversation. So what I'm taking away from this session is just how easy this conversation has been. Easy and needed.
Lovely.
I'm taking away that the different styles and types of advocacy, the face of advocacy when we advocate on behalf of others, what it can look like, and how we all need advocates.
We all need it.
And how the people being advocated can feel like how they can feel seen, heard, valued, and protected. So the different styles and types of advocacy, but the benefits of someone advocating on your behalf. So I just want to say, massive thank you for taking time out. I want to commend, salute, affirm, bench press, big up,
Bench press.
and just say, thank you for the lives that you've touched, that you will continue to touch, and just again, as we say in the words of Curtis Mayfield, just keep on keeping on, and salute, Queen, salute.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I want to thank you guys. You make it look so easy, and thank you for the people that you will reach. There is a definite audience for you to reach, and I'm thinking in particular males who won't necessarily rock up to a therapist. Females too, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking that you are going to reach a lot of men, and it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Till the next session, we'll see you then. Peace and love.